Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Well, we got a fun bunch of guys in here for the first segment today on Dateline. Two Chicago transplants. They've been playing the blues for decades in New Haven, Chicago-style blues. They have a new side project that is already making the finals in a statewide competition for best blues music in Connecticut. Say good morning to Mark Zaretsky, Tom Crivolone of the Chicago Dogs. Good morning, gentlemen, and thanks a lot for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so let me make sure I got the whole genealogy straight. Mark Zaretsky, most people know you as the Cobalt Rhythm Kings. I think I went to my first Cobalt Rhythm Kings show in maybe 1990 at the Corchester became Boppers. Do you know what I'm talking about on College and Crown?
It was in the 90s. It was a little later than that, but yeah, it was.
If you go a little closer in the mic, just like you're almost touching it.
It was a place called the Bash.
The Bash?
Which is what followed Boppers.
And that was fun. I thought you guys sounded great, but you kept at it and you've been keeping a blues band going.
Yeah.
Chicago's playing blues, and now you got a new side project with Tom, your fellow Chicago transplant.
That's correct. Called
the Chicago Dogs. Tom, what have you been mostly doing as all these years as a blues musician? What's your main gig?
My main gig, you mean how I make money? So, well, for years I worked with the Eddie Clearwater Band. I was a touring blues musician.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, it was. I started at 55, so it was really like a dream that I always wanted to do. And Mark and I met long before that. And when I actually came to Connecticut, I've been involved with a lot of different bands. Currently have my own band.
What's your band called?
Shufflebone.
Shufflebone.
Shufflebone. Duos and trios. We're over town.
And is it blues?
Yeah, blues, mostly blues, but some New Orleans and some soul and a little bit of classic rock and roll.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, we have a great time. I have a great piano player and duos and trio work, and then sometimes full band.
And you told me before we went on that you mostly do electric. You brought your acoustic today. Do you do mostly rhythm guitar, lead guitar, or a little of both?
Lead guitarist, but when I was working with Eddie Clearwater, I was primarily a rhythm guitarist. But it's so much fun, It's
and when you're playing rhythm guitar, is it more like rock where you hit only 2 or 3 strings at a time, or is it more like classic blues where you might hit the whole?
Well, it's not, most of the stuff what I do is not finger picking, although it's part of it.
No, I'm talking about when you're doing rhythm.
When I'm doing, that's what I'm saying. But bottom line is there are so many different parts. People don't really realize it, not unless they play guitar and unless they play blues music. But there are always lines to cover and, counter melodies, and that's one of the things that makes blues different, than a lot of different, it's not just a straight,
It's not a 1-4-5
rock and roll stuff. Well, it can be 1-4-5, but inside of that, there's a whole world, And I always say you have to play great rhythm guitar in order to qualify to be a good soloist.
And why is that?
Well, because you really playing the interplay in the music, especially when it's a rhythmic form of music that comes like blues or soul, less intellectual than jazz, but jazz too. You really have to understand the intricacies of what's going on in the rest of the music until your stuff is different. Otherwise, it's just an exercise in noodling, or you know what I mean. And
although there's a lot to be said for noodling, but that's when you're alone in your bedroom.
I call it the muskrat ramble, which even some jazz players are guilty of it. Great guitar players, but they miss the essence, the rhythm of the song. And if you do that, you're laughed off blues stages. So,
and Mark Zaretsky, you've been playing that harmonica since you were how old?
I picked it up. I think I bought a harmonica when I was in high school. Didn't play it for a few years. First started playing it in college, and actually first seriously started playing it when I went on a 7-week winter term trip to Ireland, and we were cruising around Ireland in a VW bus. And one of the other people on the it was like an English literature or Irish literature trip, and one of the other people was a woman who played folk guitar, and I pulled out the harmonica.
And it does take a lot to be able to play along with folk guitar. You kind of go in and out in the first chord in the 5, but blues is a whole different story. And you came from Chicago.
I did.
And I got the sense that you were pretty steeped in blues music before that. Is that true?
I was very steeped in blues music from early in high school.
Is that
And-
because Chicago had such a good blues scene? The whole Muddy Water brought it north from the south?
and back then, all those guys, Muddy and Willie Dixon, and all these, Coco Taylor, Buddy Guy and Junior Wells, James Cotton were all there, and they would basically tour the world in the summers, and they would be, in the winters, but in the summers they all came home to Chicago.
So you went to the blues festivals and all that?
And even before I was able to get into bars.
But we could get into bars back then, right? I mean, like, I used to get in 16, 17. The age was 18. They weren't as strict.
Right. It was easy. Yeah. I mean, I started going to bars when I was 8, as soon as I was able to drive. But we used to follow all those guys, especially Muddy and Willie Dixon, around the Chicago area, and they would be playing just like you have a band play on the green on a Friday night here. You'd have Muddy Waters, with Buddy
fun.
and Junior opening for them.
Wow.
Playing at the pool in Western Springs, Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me about what caught your interest about harmonica and the blues, because obviously harmonica is crucial for the blues. Blues harmonica is different from folk harmonica. You're probably starting out in, probably doing 500 miles when you're in Ireland, right, or Kilkenny or something like that. What got you connected to harmonica with the blues, and why did this become your lifelong avocation and your love for like 40 years later?
I was always very musically inclined, and I play piano pretty much by ear, but I took I tried taking piano lessons and got nowhere. I tried taking guitar lessons and got nowhere. I bought a bass guitar and learned to play a little bass, but really didn't get very far. And harmonica was an instrument that it was very expressive, and I could play it. And I connected with the fact that you're not just playing notes, but you're expressing yourself. You can make it talk, and I think that's what pulled me in. And
and then you play two roles. Like, first of all, you don't play chromatic, right? You just play.
I play a little chromatic. I have a couple of chromatics, but I'm primarily a diatonic player, which are the smaller harmonicas you need.
And it's basically for blues with the seventh notes, but not like the
you need a different harmonica for each
key.
Although you can, there's
Well,
different.
can you play a G harmonica in E, because it's kind of like you're flattening the G?
Well, you can. There's a lot of things you can do. You just have to, play. Be very selective in the notes you play, and sometimes you have to bend to get the notes.
Which is always the best sound, right?
Well, yeah, if you can, but I mean, some notes just aren't there. In a certain, depending which, in order to have all the notes there, you have to be in, the standard blues
Is E.
It's second and third position. Cross harp is second position. So if the band is in A, I'm playing the harmonica, a D harmonica, or a G, or in third position a G harmonica, which is something you use more for minor blues.
Is that because of the seventh notes or what?
It's again, different styles you're in.
So yeah, I noticed you carry around a case, as do a lot of people, with a whole bunch of harmonicas.
Yep.
So if they say, I've seen, like when you're at Rocky Lawrence's house that day, come on up, Mark, jam with the band. You got to decide which harmonica. In a split second, are you sometimes,
Yes.
if they say we're playing an E or we're playing an A, you don't know automatically which one you're going to pick. You're going to feel what in the mood, which notes you're going to bend more.
Sometimes I'll generally know that it's this one or that one, and
You pick.
we'll decide by which one seems to sound better. But
So we're talking to Mark Zaretsky and Tom Crivolone, who are longtime blues musicians, both from Chicago, bringing that Chicago sound. We're going to get to that in a little while. But they have a new side project called the Chicago Dogs, DAWGS. How did this project come about?
we just, Tom and I have known each other for a long time, and not just that, but Tom splits his time between Connecticut and Chicago, and he actually knew my brother in Chicago. They used to.
I ran a blues jam at a popular blues club, and it wasn't until months maybe almost a year later that I put it together. That he was actually, because people, hey, and that really don't exchange last names, and all of a sudden I said, "You're Mark's brother." He goes, "Yeah," and then it was like amazing. But that was.
So when did you form this duo?
I asked Tom if he would be interested in doing something, because we basically formed it for the Connecticut Blues Challenge.
And what is the Connecticut Blues Challenge?
It's a contest that the Connecticut Blues Society runs every year to determine who's going to represent it and represent the state at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis, Tennessee. That's something that the Blues Foundation, which is sort of like the main blues, support group in this country, runs. And there's basically blues bands from all over the world. You don't.
And how do you compete in a musical? I guess it's like The Voice.
It's all pretty subjective. We try not to look at it too much as competition, although it is a competition. But really, it's music, and hopefully you don't get too tied up in. I think the bands that are too tied up in the competition, unless they win, are disappointed.
So they have 2 rounds. You went to the first round and you won.
Yeah, we won. They had several weeks in a row at Black Eyed Sally's, which is a bar in Hartford, bar and restaurant, and our preliminary was there. That there were 4 bands in it, and we were. There's like a bunch of people who are judges, and they score. And there's a criteria. They don't just go by who they think is best. They judge on a number of criteria, and we were the highest scoring band that week.
So now do you compete in a final round before you just find out if you go to Memphis?
Yeah, there's a final round, which is this Sunday, July 31st at Bushnell Park in Hartford. And I think it starts at 3, and we're the final band. There's going to be 5 bands because there were 4 rounds plus a wild card. The band
sounds like the NL East. Okay, and then who of those 5 one gets to go?
Exactly, and whoever gets chosen, the Blues Society runs fundraisers to help come up with money to.
And how many people are in the Dogs?
We're a 4-piece.
now.
4-piece. Okay.
Bass, drum, guitar,
and you said there's
harmonica.
one other New Haven band that made the finals.
Yeah, there's another New Haven band called Snake Hill Blues, which is I think was formed by a guy by the name of Joe Montalto and Chris DePino,
who's been on the show. Yeah.
Who I know a lot of people know is the harmonica player in that band. And
have you ever played with Chris?
Yeah, we did a thing many years ago. It was a night of harmonica blues at Cafe 9 with me, Chris DePino, and this guy Don DeStefano, no relation to the former mayor. And it was the 3 of us playing with my band, the Cobalt Rhythm Kings, backing us. That was probably 20 years ago at this point.
Another lifetime before the pandemic. So, guys, why don't you play me your new song that you played in the first round, right? You have a song about Ukraine.
Yeah, this is a song that we debuted. No one ever heard it until we played it in the prelims, and it's a song that I wrote called I Feel Your Pain.
All right. The Chicago Dogs.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain. I feel your pain. It's happening again. Ukraine. Missiles raining down again. Missiles raining down again. Well, I feel your pain. Russian missiles raining down again. Ukraine. soldiers trapped in a steel plant. Ukrainian kids slaughtered in a theater. I feel your pain. Missiles raining down again, Ukraine. Well, Europe's bread goes down the drain. Europe's bread go down the drain. Europe's bread go down the drain. We all feel your pain. I'm crying for Ukraine. Well, I feel your pain. Feel your pain. Oh, feel your pain. It's happening again. Ukraine. I said I feel your pain. Ooh, it's happening again. Ukraine.
I feel your pain. It's happening again, Ukraine. The Chicago Dogs, a new duo in New Haven, side project of Chicago-bred New Haven-based musicians Mark Zaretsky, Tom Crivolone here on Dateline New Haven. WNHH-FM 103.5, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Nice, good song, guys. What got you to write that song, Mark?
It's just so sad. You know, I think I started writing it. I almost switched in mid-gear and turned it into a school shooting song because there's so many going on. But yeah, I just, you know, my people came here from Belarus, and
Mine came from Poland, Russia. Yeah.
you know, it's like, what is it? I don't understand what it is with Russia. No matter what the government is there, they can't just live with their neighbors. They're always trying to put together a greater, empire.
As Belarus is kind of part of the empire now,
Well,
so it's
right,
a staging ground
but
for
I'm
this
just-
invasion. Yeah.
But it wasn't always part of the empire. You know,
Right.
my two of my grandparents fled from there, and one fled from Lithuania, chased out by Cossacks. And
So this hits a little home for you.
well, it just seems like this country is just getting battered for really no reason that I can see.
And you're doing the song at a time when interest is flagging a little bit in that conflict in the world. People think about inflation. They're thinking about heat. They're thinking about how long you're going to keep the arms flowing, which is kind of, I think, the chess move Putin in Russia was guessing.
They're thinking about it.
What he's counting on.
Yeah.
That's always the issue. The issue when you write topical songs is I've written some very pointed topical songs, and then 6 months later,
Who cares?
or a year later, whatever I wrote about is something that people aren't necessarily thinking about it.
But you can remind them. Do you do a lot of songwriting, Mark?
I go in and out.
Because you're pretty familiar with the canon, right? I mean, you do a lot of classics and
Yeah,
little-known songs.
we do a lot of other people's songs, but we like to do our own, and it's not. I mean, I think when we play it in the finals, Tom and I have been talking. I think our goal is to play 100% original blues, and we'll be probably the only band that plays 100% original blues.
And you plan to play this one?
Yeah, this will be one of the ones.
All right. Mark Zaretsky, Tom Crivolone, the Chicago Dogs. Tell me about Chicago blues. So we all think of Chicago blues, both the acoustic, but especially electric. Was Elmore also electric? And was Chicago?
Yes.
Elmore
I
James?
think Elmore James was actually, I think, down in Memphis.
Right,
But
came
Why
up.
do I
There was a
associate
lot of
him?
there's a lot of
Like
people
Dust
who went,
My Broom. I know it was Robert
There's a-
Johnson's song, but he did Electric in Chicago.
there's a lot of people who went back and forth. So,
Well, it's
you know,
part of the mass migration, right?
you know, if you back then, it was part of the mass migration. Everybody was heading up to Chicago to work because Chicago,
and we're talking what now? The 40s, 50s?
yeah, post-war,
40s, yeah.
post-World
And
War.
the caricature is Muddy Waters was playing the acoustic guitar in Mississippi and then plugged in Chicago, and the Chicago sound made it electric. Is that simplifying it?
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi blues and Chicago blues are very similar, especially now because what's now Mississippi blues has echoes of Chicago in it because a lot of people went
Going
up
back
and
and forth.
came
So
back
what
down.
is Chicago blues?
Well, so first of all, Mark is the historian.
Okay.
But my characterization, and by the way, what he didn't say was one of the reasons we're called the Chicago Dogs because we always argue about hot dogs.
Oh.
So Mark has been here so long that he's actually kind of a diplomat. But no, I think it's the combination of the initial influences from Mississippi and in the South and Tennessee, and mixed with urban grit and rhythm, and I think that's what characterizes it. And I think one of the reasons why, despite all like Cadillac Records and things like that, I said the early artists wanted to be heard, and you just can't get that many people to hear you on your acoustic guitar, especially when it's noisy.
And Chess Records was in Chicago, so they had a
Chess
big part of
Records.
the sound.
A lot of people who didn't live in Chicago recorded there. So even
And
if,
so what, like Sue Foley, you know her? I like her music a lot. She's a Chicago guitarist. She talks about how she has the ice-picking sound of Albert Collins from Texas. And
Yes.
I love Albert Collins' playing. It's different from B.B. King's. It's different from Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
It's got kind of he plays an open D minor, which is really odd.
Yeah,
But he
yeah,
has this
a
like
rough minor.
slicing sound that she had too. How is that different from Chicago? How did that develop? How can you tell when you listen to a song that's
put-
Chicago blues? That's
First of all, it's not
Ice-Picker.
different from Chicago. The Icebreakers were Albert Collins' first band. Now, I don't know when he got the attention of Alligator Records, how many recordings, but the Icebreakers were a Chicago band.
oh, okay.
It was Aaron Burton and Larry Burton and Casey Jones, I think, right?
I think Casey Jones was in
on
there
dr-
at some point.
Yeah, on drums. So what people don't realize, Albert Collins was a unique sound, but the band behind him had all the elements of Chicago blues because it was a Chicago blues band.
I think that there's a lot of what's considered modern contemporary blues. I mean, there's different styles. West Coast blues is more of a swing
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
But a lot of who was at the center of formative years of West Coast blues, guys like George Harmonica Smith, who passed through Chicago, played with Muddy Waters.
So you're saying that
moved out
Chicago
to-
influenced anything, but is there anything that's I mean, you are the Chicago Dogs. What makes it Chicago blues?
There's a little bit of swagger in it.
What else?
Hard-hitting rhythm and
I mean, one of the differences between the Chicago Dogs and say my other band, which is also very Chicago
Chicago-oriented,
influenced blues,
yeah.
but it's a little harder edged, maybe, although not. It's not just about the hard edges because there's a lot of color in there, but I mean, you could argue that if it's electric, it's strongly influenced by Chicago blues. But I think that
Is Chicago where it happened because of the mass migration that blues really went electric in this country?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody. There was a
Every
point in
big
time
city,
where,
right.
if you walked around little towns in the South, in the 50s and 60s, everybody had relatives who had moved up to Chicago. And because that's where you went to find work, and that's why Chicago's this place where, there's great barbecue. There's this. There's people brought their Southern influences with them. And mixed it up and electrified it.
that's why the music is really wide-ranging, especially when you go to a live blues show, because you really get to see the influences, because many artists, well, look at Muddy Waters is a great example. When you listen to some of his stuff, even the harder edge later stuff, there's always a country Mississippi element in
Right.
it, and
Country
and
meets city.
they bring it, if you play the best, you have to understand Chicago blues, even
All
if you're
right.
from Memphis or from.
Well, Chicago Dogs, you got any gigs coming up?
Well, the big one is coming up on the 31st.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Playing at
Rep in New Haven. Chicago Dogs are rooting for you. Hope you
Yeah.
take home the statewide championship. Bring it down to Memphis.
And I should tell you that we just booked last night. We'll be playing on October 15th at Christopher Martin's in New Haven.
All right. So, guys, take us out here. We're going to close this segment at Dateline New Haven. We've got State Senator Gary Winfield in the wings, a regular guest on this program, come up for the second segment. But I want to thank Mark Zaretsky and Tom Crivolone for coming on Dateline New Haven and brightening our day with some Chicago blues. Good luck at the championships. What are you taking us out with?
We're going to take it out one of my songs. It's called Back to the City.
All right.
It's about the first time I lived in Connecticut, wanting to just go. It's an aim. Yeah. Worked all my life, saved every day. Headed for the country now, I find a better way. Gotta get out of Chicago, back to a place that I call home. Went down to Florida, got a house by the sea. Crutches, canes, and Cadillacs, they got the best of me. Gotta get back to a city where I belong. Gotta get back to the city.
Back to the city.
Gotta get back to a city.
Get back to the city.
Gotta get back to the city.
Back to the city.
Gotta get back to the city. Gotta get back to Chicago. Back to a place where I belong. Now we're gonna skip to the last verse. Born in Chicago where the blues are king. I've been around the world and I know just one thing. I'm gonna get back to that city, back to a place where I belong. Gotta get back to the city.
Going back to the city.
Gotta get back to the city.
Yeah, we gotta get back to the city.
Gotta get back to the city.
Going back to the city.
Gotta get back to the city. Gotta get back to the city. Back to Chicago where I belong. Back to that city.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Chicago Dogs, July 31st in Bushnell Park and points beyond. Thanks for joining us, guys. Sit tight. We're going to check it out with the I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the Afro-Semitic Experience. It's going to be the bridge here. Going to catch in the rebound with State Senator Gary Winfield on WNHH's Dateline New Haven.